Desert Bats by Jarvis, B. Chavez. As I hurriedly stumbled down from the back of the troop transport, I fell on all fours onto the hard desert ground. The sun had just finished setting in this desolate canyon. It was pitch black. I pulled on the night vision goggles and yanked on the straps to adjust them to fit my head. I then looked in the direction of the ridge directly above me. I quickly scanned from left to right to see if I could see anyone. I didn't see anything yet. When I had first joined the U.S. Army, I never envisioned myself fighting the supernatural. Fighting vampires? I'm Corporal Nick Bison. I was currently serving in Afghanistan with an infantry unit. We got orders to check out some intel that the nearby hills were harboring enemy troops. These troops were sneaking back and forth across the border using these hills. We were supposed to check it out and report back to base. If we found large numbers of them, we had orders to radio in for an airstrike on their location. We were a group of 9 men. Our squad leader was Sergeant Marinos. Corporal Savage and I were next in charge. I pulled a magazine out of my pocket and loaded my automatic handgun. I holstered it and checked my backpack to see if I had extra ammo for my M4 and checked for my Bowie knife. Luckily, it was all there. I peeked around the truck. I felt the sweat run down my face. There seemed to be no movement in the canyon. This mission had been nothing but trouble from the start. Just before we reached these cursed hills, our radio operator informed us that there was some type of interference in the area and he couldn't send or receive any communications. Corporal Savage said that probably due to the different types of magnetic ores in these hills and rock formations. The Sarge agreed and decided to continue in spite of the situation. He said we would just have to do our reconnaissance and wait to get out of the area before we could radio back to base with our report. Translation, we would be on our own. If we ran into any problem, we could not request help or immediate evac. Maybe we should have all taken this as a bad omen. Of course, we didn't. We hiked into the area as ordered. We came to the foot of this mountain range. We located a trail that took us deep into the heart of the mountain. The path led us to a fork in the road. It split into 2 paths. One led off towards a smaller canyon and the other to a larger one, according to the map. We split into teams. Corporal Savage would lead one team, and the Sarge and I would lead another. Our walkie-talkies didn't work, so we agreed that just before dusk, each team would send a man back to meet here at the fork and update the other what they had found and wait further orders. We were in charge of sweeping the smaller canyons. We fanned out in different directions. The canyon was curved, and we couldn't see the end of it. The Sarge sent 2 men ahead and scouted it out. The canyon walls were barren, with only a few shallow caves. They could only accommodate 1 man lying in a fetal position. One of the soldiers came running towards the Sarge and myself. "Sarge, we found an old abandoned military truck at the end of the canyon. It was an old transport truck that had a tarp cover in the back. All the tires had been ripped to shreds and the hood of the truck was open. Upon closer inspection, it had looked like somebody had broken apart the engine into pieces. This left us scratching our heads. "What do you make of it, Sarge?" I asked. He rubbed his chin. "Well, this is the same type of truck that is used by the enemy. The truck may have had some kind of mechanical problem and broke down. They couldn't repair it, so they disabled it to make sure no one else could use it. It seemed like a reasonable explanation at the time. We looked through the truck and found nothing. It was clean. We spent the rest of the afternoon searching that canyon with a fine-tooth comb. It was just before sunset when all the men reported in saying the canyon was clear. The Sarge walked over to me and said, 'Get one of the men to go back to the fork and wait for Corporal Savage's messenger.' The Sarge turned towards the men and said, 'The rest of you men take 20 and have some chow while we wait for Corporal Savage's report.' We all took a seat on the ground and broke out our rations. I ripped open my package. Score! I got a packet of jalapeno cheese spread with some crackers, I yelled out. Sarge turned to me and said, "You lucky bastard." The jalapeno cheese spread was highly sought after MRE item. As I was about to rip open the cheese spread, there was a loud explosion. "What the hell is that?" I exclaimed. The Sarge jumped to his feet and looked towards the sky. A plume of smoke was rising far off in the distance. "That's coming from the next canyon," remarked the Sarge. "You mean Corporal Savage's canyon?" I replied. We both looked at each other. I turned and yelled out, "Gear up! We're gonna go get Corporal Savage and his team." We were getting our gear on to leave, and Sarge decided we should store some of our heavier gear and radio in the abandoned truck for now. We needed to travel light. We'll come back for our stuff later. We made our way to the next canyon. We followed the smoke to a large cave opening at the top of the canyon wall. As we got closer, we saw something lying near the foot of the canyon. It was covered in black soot. I walked ahead, and then I recognized it was one of our men face down in the sand. It was PFC Kowalski. I turned him over and saw blood pouring out of his abdomen. He then opened his eyes and let out a gasp. I yelled out, "He's alive! Nadolny, over here!" Our combat medic, Private Nadolny, ran over. He quickly pulled his pack open and started pulling out bandages and an IV bag. The Sarge came over and kneeled down next to Kowalski. "Easy there, soldier. Let Nadolny patch you up," remarked the Sarge. He leaned in closer. "What happened?" Kowalski looked up at the Sarge. "We decided to sweep the big cave first." He pointed to the cave opening just above us. "There's a tunnel that leads down about 10 feet to a lower level. That's where we were attacked by a bunch of them. One of them sliced me open like a fish. The corporal shot it in the face and it grabbed me. We couldn't hold him off, so Corporal gave us orders to fall back. We were overwhelmed and started dropping like flies. The corporal and I managed to make our way back towards the mouth of the cave. He then pulled out 2 grenades from his pack and said he couldn't let them get out of the cave. He pushed me out of the cave and ran back towards the cave. Then there was a big explosion. "Christ," the Sarge uttered. "Corporal Savage took those bastards with him," I said. Then Kowalski just closed his eyes and fell limp. Nadolny looked up to the Sarge. "He's gone." There was a momentary silence. "So, should we start digging for possible survivors, Sarge?" I remarked. "Negative, Corporal Bison," replied the Sarge. "This message is over, and we don't have the time or equipment to dig or mourn for anyone. That explosion got our attention, and it may bring more of the enemy looking for their men. We'll swing back to pick up our gear we stored in the abandoned truck. Luckily for us, the sun is setting now. We'll use the cover of darkness to get out. We have the night vision equipment we can use. As soon as we clear the radio dead zone, we'll call for an extraction." I turned to the men and yelled out, "Okay, you heard the Sarge. 2 minutes, people. Get hot." As I stood up, I saw the sun sink slowly below the horizon. All of a sudden, we felt the ground shake violently. We saw what looked like a black swarm of bees rocket out of one of the smaller caves further down the canyon. This swarm then slowly maneuvered straight towards us. As this swarm drew closer, we noticed it wasn't bees coming towards us. The Sarge raised his machine gun and yelled out, "Incoming!" What happened next felt surreal. It all seemed to be happening in slow motion. The thing broke flight formation and landed on 2 legs. There were 5 of these creatures. One landed just in front of the Sarge, just a few feet away from me. It towered over the Sarge, who was 6'2". It was at least 7 feet tall. The thing was covered in leathery-looking gray flesh. It was thin and lanky like a runner. It had a bulbous head with pointy ears. It had long arms, a large pair of membranous bat-like wings, sprung from its back. The thing that I will never forget is its large glowing red eyes like a demon out of hell. For a second, I couldn't move. I felt frozen in place. The Sarge opened fire on this thing. At that point, my instincts must have kicked in because I raised my weapon and started shooting at it. Everyone started firing off their weapons. Machine gun fire was deafening. You could see all the rounds hitting this thing. The creature fell back from a sheer impact of the rounds being shot from both the Sarge and me. The thing then slowly got back up off the ground. It bared its long fangs and stared at us. It looked pissed. It let out an ear-piercing shriek. All the rounds had done nothing to this thing. It immediately leapt towards the Sarge. The thing pulled the machine gun out of his hands and tossed it aside. It then grabbed the Sarge's head and pulled up on it, then forced his head back with a loud crack. His body fell to the ground. The thing then turned towards me. It ran at me and grabbed me around my ribs and squeezed. I felt a shooting pain run right through me. I involuntarily dropped my M4. I felt this thing leap, and we were both airborne. I quickly pulled out my sidearm and rammed it into the creature's mouth, discharging it several times. The bat's head snapped back violently. Its body started to shake like it was having some kind of seizure. We came crashing to the ground like a ton of bricks. I managed to roll clear of the bat. We had landed on top of a hill opposite the mouth of the cave. I saw the creature trying to get up. It was doubled over like it was in pain. It was holding its head in two hands. It stumbled around like it was drunk. Then it wandered to the edge of the hill and fell to the canyon floor. As I looked over the edge to see it lying lifelessly on the canyon floor, I saw another one of those things sink its fangs into Private Watson. The rest of these things looked like they were actually feasting on the flesh of my team. I turned away and tried to think of what to do next. I needed to warn the army. I got up and headed in the direction of the canyon we had stored the rest of the equipment. I ran occasionally looking back to see if I was being followed. I was able to double time it back to the canyon and being able to go over the hill instead of around it like we had done earlier. I managed to climb down the canyon wall safely. I reached the truck. I grabbed an M4 we had left behind and our radio. I was going to stick to the Sarge's original plan and use the night vision goggles to help me get out of this fucking canyon tonight. My mind was still spinning with everything I had just seen. Were these things really vampires, like from the movies? What a time to be caught without a cross and a clove of garlic. They're referred to in legend as the undead, meaning they're particularly invulnerable and can't be killed easily. They don't go down with machine gun fire, that's for sure. Their hides seem to be very thick and tough, like an elephant's. However, the bat that grabbed me seemed to have felt the rounds I let off in its mouth. Could it be that they have a delicate tissue inside its head and mouth like we do? I didn't see blood spurt out of its head, but maybe that tough hide of his kept the rounds from blasting through. It was something to think about. I cautiously maneuvered my way down the canyon. I'd only stopped to take cover behind rocks or occasionally a tree. I saw the bats fly overhead a couple times, but they never spotted me. I also would hear their high-pitched squeal echoing off the canyon walls. This made it difficult to pinpoint the direction the sound was coming from. I used to think the people of this region were just overly superstitious. They would tell fanciful tales of jinns and ghouls living deep in the desert. I guess all the legends have a basis in fact. These things didn't show themselves until sunset. That was one part of the legend I was hoping was true. If I could make it until dawn, I'd have a good chance of surviving. My adrenaline must have been pumping at full blast. I swear I don't remember how I got to the foot of the mountain range. I saw the open desert in front of me. Alright, I thought to myself. I pulled out the radio and fired it up, hoping that I could get a signal out. Shit, nothing but static. That's okay. All I had to do now was walk further away from these mountains, and I should be able to call out. I swung the radio over my shoulder and started to walk. The sky started to turn a light blue, and the sun was about to rise. I walked for another 15 minutes. I again fired up the radio. This time I got a signal. I immediately got a female voice. Holy shit, it's working. I gave my squad info, repeated, all my squad is dead, killed by enemy fire. Confirm a force of 50 hiding in caves. Need immediate evac. Requesting airstrike at the following coordinates. I pulled out the map that had the coordinates. I read them off to her. Just before I read off the last number, I heard an intense whooshing sound coming from behind me. I turned and saw one of those things flying towards me at an incredible speed. I dropped the radio and reached for my sidearm. It rammed into me with full force. I awoke on the ground of the cave. I felt a searing pain coming from my neck. I touched my neck and felt a huge gash. I looked at my hand to see it was covered in blood. I heard some movement just in front of me. I tried to get up, but found I could barely move. Then there was this hissing noise that seemed to be coming from all around me. Then a ghastly form walked out of the darkness into the moonlight that was coming through some opening in the cave. It was a female version of these bats. It had breasts hanging from its chest. She was smaller and thinner than her male counterparts. Behind her were taller bats. They seemed to flank her on both sides like they were her bodyguards. I sensed many others around me even though I couldn't see them. All of a sudden, they stopped and started looking towards the ceiling of the cave. That's when I heard it. An explosion. Leave it up to the army. When in doubt about the coordinate, just bomb the whole mountain down. I let out a laugh. I pointed my finger towards the sky and said, "That's my people." I then hit my chest with an open palm of my hand. "Hey, Queen of the Damned, let's see you guys get up from this." I gave her the finger. She looked at my finger and seemed to realize what it meant. She bore her fangs and hissed at me. That's when the ceiling came crashing down on us. "Colonel Austin, this is Major Travers. We just completed the bombardment. Our intel was correct." "Sir, yes, sir. I will get a small recovery team out there before nightfall. Don't worry, sir. We'll comb through all the debris for any valuable enemy intel. We'll stay there all night if we have to." "Yes, sir. I'm going out personally to take command of this search." "No, sir. I foresee no problem with this operation."